I'd like to, the purpose of today's meeting is to select the people or the respondents to the RFQ that we're going to interview, and how we're going to interview them, at least in some general format. Since this is recorded and will be on the will be put on YouTube, I would like to request that we don't discuss any of the individual proposals, none of the details of the individual proposals, and speak of them generally, and just first determine whom we're going to interview, and secondly, determine how we're going to conduct the interviews, what questions we're going to ask, we wouldn't get them here, but we would get a method for getting the questions ready, and if we would determine to send all the questions to all the people who responded to the RFP, or we ask all the questions in the interview, or some hybrid version of that. We send some questions and save specific questions for individual respondent for the interview. With that, any questions about that or what we're going to do today? Nope.
Sounds good, Joe.
I guess the easiest thing would be to ask for a motion just to interview all 4 of the respondents, and then we can discuss that, or we can vote on it. So does someone like to make that?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. And any discussion? Then in favor, anyone who objects, say no. Then we will, if none, we will interview all 4 of the respondents. And you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, sort of. I'm not sure that I agree that we should interview all 4. I'm wondering if we want to try to come up with 3. And I have a vote for, or not a vote, but a remark about the one that might fall off the list.
I looked at the four, and I thought that too, but I guess in fairness, I thought we should interview all 4, simply because we didn't rank we would judge one based differently than we judged the others.
I would just add too, my initial thoughts were the same. 3 maybe stood out, 1 maybe not as much, but the 4th one, which I thought was a little bit different, maybe might offer something, is maybe a slightly different kind of firm, might offer a different point of view. So I thought from an interview perspective, it might be fair, and it might also offer us some additional food for thought in our selection process.
Yeah, our questions could be targeted to deal with the concerns that we might feel about that 4th applicant.
And they would be individual questions for that applicant only then? No,
we would ask, I think we need to have a script for that. We should treat every single one of the respondents exactly the same and ask the exact same set of questions. But that we can come up with our list of questions based on partially on concerns that we might have about any of the particular candidates.
Okay, so yeah. Let's get back to any other discussion on the motion.
Yeah, or just one other note, Joe, I would mention too, kind of add on that, being on the other side of that table numerous times doing proposals myself and interviews. We need a set of questions to ask all of the proposals, all the candidates. And then kind of to Ann's point, we would follow up, I think, with additional questions at that time if they haven't answered that question fully, or we have more want more information about that firm, or, if we have any questions or issues with what they're saying. I think from my review of the RFP proposals, I'm not sure that all 4 met the requirements of the RFP, but I will go along with the group and interview all 4.
Any
Yeah, I'm
other
kind of in agreement with the rest of the crowd. There was 3 that seemed to be in one group and 1 that kind of stood out a little bit away from that. If I was to work to go down to 3, I think we would probably all agree on which one could be dropped out. But I think the perspective that Joe brought up was, maybe we will learn a little bit more just from it, and maybe that will help us in detail for other questions with the other 3 candidates.
back to the original motion proposal that we interview all 4. Any objections now? Thank you, everyone. Motion passed.
Do
And
we actually call for a roll vote usually?
there's no usual. I'm not, this is my first time where I really have to stick to Robert's rules.
Okay, so you want to say all in favor of that, and then we all say aye, and then that's noted that and then any abstentions or any nays, and then any abstentions. So
Okay.
all in favor of the motion.
All in
Is
favor of the
that- is
motion,
that-
say aye.
Wait a second, does that go against our idea that we're trying to be consensus rather than non-consensus?
Well, I think there are certain Robert's rules that the town seems to follow that I'm not used to. I think if the vote is unanimous, then that's the same as consensus. If there are objections, we should continue to discuss until we've answered all objections. And I think we've been doing that without following the rules exactly. That's exactly what we've been doing over the last couple of minutes. And that's where video and actually some of the in person helps, because Anne, I could see on your face that you needed to say something, but and you hadn't said it yet, or you hadn't vocalized it yet. So the video is an important part of or in person is an important part of the process that we're doing. Okay, now start again. The motion was that we interview all 4 of the candidates. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? I think we got everybody. No, any abstentions? Okay, so
I just want to say the reason for that, there may be a time when somebody may have to abstain for a particular reason. And you just don't know.
conflict of interest or something like that. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's something that we don't even know about. Okay.
Right.
And the interview dates are the 29th and 30th. Jacqueline, I presume you would be the one who would set those up?
Yep, I can do that. You guys want to pick a time? Oh, Bill.
No, yeah, I told all of them, I thought we were gonna do it on the 29th. Might have told some of the 30th. One company said they had a conflict and they could only make the 29th. So I just sharing that when they dropped them off, I talked to each contractor or each individual person and I gave them a heads up. So I think that we would just be polite. If someone has a conflict on the 30th, we'd make it for the 29th.
Okay.
It's up to you on when I told them that you hadn't decided in person or on Zoom, because I couldn't remember, but I did give them a heads up for the 29th.
And that was actually my next question was, I believe we talked about doing in person when practical. We're all here in in town. I don't know how far away some of these some of the respondents might be on the 29th or the 30th. I think if one of the respondents is this presents a particular hardship, or they're unable to make it to Madison on the 29th or 30th, that we in that case we allow a Zoom interview.
That makes sense. Can we try to do it in one night, which like the 29th, kind of try to focus on, I don't think 4 is too much. Does anybody else disagree?
How long would an interview take generally, do you think?
Good question.
Bill?
I would
Or
probably
David?
propose like maybe like a half an hour with 15 minutes in between to swap them in and out. I don't know. Bill, what's your thought?
That's exactly what we've done for the interviews for firms on this caliber. We've done half hour with 15 minutes of interview, so it's a 45-minute process.
Okay,
So that would be a long,
It is long.
if we do it in one day. Okay.
Well, you got to figure they're going to have a presentation portion before or after our questions. So depending, Joe, how we stage it, normally we would ask the questions first and they would give their proposal or their presentation or present first, then we ask questions. So I think my proposal would be let them do their presentation first for a set amount. You give them 15 minutes, then we get 15 minutes of question and answer, and then they go.
Could
and
we maybe do 2 and 2?
two on
2
one day.
on the 29th, 2 on the 30th?
And when would we be starting? Just wanna,
Time-wise, you mean?
yeah, what do we think?
I could do, I'm pretty flexible, but I just think it's gonna be hard to stay focused for that long.
It's true. Yeah, no, I have to agree now that I'm thinking, yeah.
Is there, I know everybody doesn't have their calendars here, but Jacqueline's going to have to start doing this. I'm available pretty much anytime, either of those days.
So am I.
Are there any other, does anybody else have a conflict?
Well, I'm booked until 6, but that's an event that's starting at 3, so I can duck out early, I think. It's a marketing kind of sales thing, so I can kind of jump out. It's a summit.
My preference would be not morning. This is the first week school starts, so it might be a bit hectic.
I think
Joe,
evening
Joe,
would
what-
be preferable. to me.
Yeah, Joe, why wouldn't we do like the first one at 5 and then 5:45 to 6:30 for the second one? Because these people that are doing the presentations they're probably working during the day too, so they could already have obligations.
I indicated that they would be in the evening, 5-ish, 5:30. That's what I assumed that you guys were doing it. So that's
Okay.
what I told them, but it's up to you and,
Great.
you know, they'll accommodate you, I'm sure.
Could we start Tuesday at 5:30 if that's okay? So that just gives me half an hour to do the travel from where I'm coming from.
How about if we start both 5:30 both days? If that's 29th and 30th, again, it's a Tuesday, Wednesday?
Mhm.
Okay. And again, this depends on.
No, it's a Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah,
29th and 30th?
Yeah,
that's a
Monday,
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 Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Okay, Tuesday, okay.
With Tuesday probably going longer because would we then make the decision on Tuesday, do we think?
Yeah, and your decision would be a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. And then we would put it on their next agenda.
Right. Yes, Ann?
Are we wanting to check references before making a decision?
I guess the question is, do we want to check references for all of them? Because then we would do that first. Or do we only want to really just check
Everybody's references if we're only
check-
gonna hire one.
Yeah. Dave or Joe, what do you
So-
normally do?
So Joe, I think what would happen is Jacqueline would send out the invites to them, giving their day and time of their interview. And then we would reach out to the references in between now and the interviews.
Oh.
Okay,
So then when we have the interviews, we already have the information. Because I don't think we have time afterwards to have our recommendation for the selected firm, right? And then check their references and then meet up again to decide maybe that wasn't the best choice, you know? I think we want to get it ahead of time, be my thought.
I agree.
Do we want to split up between the group as to the phone calls for the references? Because they're all listed in their RFP, correct? I believe they all were.
Jacqueline, is that something, or Bill, is that something someone from the town would do, or is that something we would be required to do?
So there's no hard rule. The committee that I'm working with now, basically the committee members have done it themselves and made their own selection and own recommendations. They haven't asked me or Raquel, who's working with me on the other one. We have not gotten involved. Now, you know, they've done it themselves. Are we willing to help you? Absolutely. To me, it's a perspective though, you know, what you call somebody. And if you're in the industry, if Dave calls somebody he knows that does work with somebody, he gets a better perspective than I might get if I call somebody cold. So I think that's part of the things too. You know, it's up to you. Jacqueline and I are here to help you out any way you want. You could definitely interview them and then not make a decision and then check the status, because then you only have one firm. But that's up to you, and there's no hard rule.
Maybe if we create a list of questions for the references as well, then, you know, maybe relying, I hate to do this to you, David, but relying on your expertise as to maybe some questions we can ask the references that would give us insight if there were any issues or something like that.
Yeah, we do keep track of all the questions we've ever been asked at interviews, so I'm pretty sure I have about 150 we can choose from. So I can whittle it down to something that's manageable for all of us.
That'd be helpful.
Like 4.
Yeah, and I get references all the time because contractors sometimes with bonding capacity, they'll call me and want information about our current projects and the status of their subcontractors. So I can dig through those questions too.
So to summarize so far, we have 2 and 2 interviews on, presuming the people are available, on Monday the 29th and Tuesday the 30th, starting at 4:30, roughly half an hour interview with 15 minutes before the next interview. But again, depending on the availability of the people we're going to be interviewing. We will have a list of questions for them that I'm not sure I got this, but we'll have a list of questions that we will provide to them before the interview. Is that correct or not? Or,
That's not typical from what I've done, but we could. I'm not opposed either way. Typically, you have the questions, you give them to them at the interview, but it's up to you guys.
I mean, I think unless we're going into some great detail, I don't see why you'd have the questions to them beforehand. I'd like to actually see how they react to a question if they have that information in front of them, if they're knowledgeable, and because I think that says a lot as well. If you're prepping and you already know the questions beyond the presentation.
Yeah, I agree with Joanne. I'd like to see how they react to them rather than give some canned prepared answer.
So we will, before the interviews, we will prepare a list of questions. It'll be the same list for everyone. But as the interview goes on, if depending on what their answers are, we can ask. We will be then free to ask follow-up questions.
Right. So
maybe,
Joe's
maybe different for the different people.
And Joe too. I mean, each one of us could come up with our own question, right? So each person on the committee could ask a question to each of the teams. So if Joan has a specific question that she'd like to ask, let her ask that question to all the teams, and then Eileen the same thing, and on, right? So I'm willing to go through and I'll share some questions I think would be relevant, and then people can pick and choose their own thoughts.
Okay. So we'll wait, Dave, for you to send out a base list, and then we'll each add whatever we think will be appropriate that we might want to ask, and then from that we'll narrow it down to some limited number of questions. I mean, we won't have time for 20 questions, not even if they were yes/no answers. So we'd have to feel in 15 minutes, what can they respond to? And I'm thinking probably no more than 5 questions.
Yeah, but if each of us asked them a question, they literally would have 2 minutes to answer, right?
Yeah,
If all 7 of us went in 15 minutes. So whatever. Hey, Bill, you mentioned you had some questions too, maybe be able to provide to the group, right? That you
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, mine are pretty basic, would you have them back? Did they do it on time? How'd they perform? They're the basic questions you've heard if you've been in interviews every time you check in. So,
now can we do this via just straight email, or should we post to the intranet site the all this, post the questions to the intranet site, then post additional questions and do the changes on the intranet site? Or can we just do this back and forth in email? I'm unfamiliar with how the town would handle this.
so normally the town wouldn't post all that stuff. That's just very time consuming and cumbersome. You're gonna have to send it to myself or Jacqueline. We got to send it to the IT people. So I think that if you just email yourselves each other, you have your email chain and just email the questions. And I'm sorry, I was thinking about the interview for, the request for references. I definitely have interview questions I could come up with too, as well.
Is that
Okay.
considered, I believe that's considered a meeting when we do a email distribution that is actually doing things, correct? Because it's not just a response, yes, I can be there. It's like, here are so do we
You could,
maybe,
yeah, you could send the questions to me and maybe I could compile them and send them back out. That's maybe like a kind of a way to do it. Bill, what do you think? And like Bill and I could work on it.
Yes, perfect idea. So everybody sends
Yeah.
Jacqueline, she sends out the correspondence to everybody. So it's a working document. We're not meeting. And I get what
Right.
you're saying. If we're having a conversation offline or we're emailing about a firm, we're not. We're going to email questions, and Jacqueline's going to take the lead and compile all the questions. So everyone emails them to Jacqueline. She'll email them back out. If anybody has any comments, back to Jacqueline. So, and then I guess we could post the final ones if we wanted to on that website, but I don't see why we need to.
Right, well, I don't know why either, but we would have it even if we needed to.
Yes,
right, so if we come back and forth and then we decide, okay, maybe there's 15 questions, maybe we need a half an hour beforehand on Monday and say, okay, which of the 5 do we want to hit? Then we're in a meeting and we say, okay, these are the 5 questions that we want to actually ask in the interview. But we've got the compiled list in front of us and everybody kind of comes in. And if there's somebody who's really strong, we all come in with, this is really strong, or there may be people going, oh, I'm okay with whatever people pick. So.
Yeah,
Yes.
Bill?
my suggestion was if it comes in from me, she can put my name on it. If it comes in from Joan, she puts her name on it, Joan's question, and then let the chairman decide who the final thing. We're going to have 50 questions. All right, we're going to do these 10. Bill, you're doing this one. Joan, you're doing this one. He's going to make the recommendation. And if anybody disagrees, I'm sure he'll reconsider, but I think just have the chairman decide.
Okay. Yeah, rather than
It'll
having another
expedite
meeting.
it and it'll get it done. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of the questions are going to be the same.
So we need the, what's the date that we need the questions by? How soon can we do it? Today is the
Friday before.
18th. That's this coming Friday?
So the 26th, Friday before, 25th or the 26th. I mean, we work a half day on the 26th on Fridays, so Fridays are a little crazy, but
Maybe
I'd
we
say
submit
a week from.
Yeah, so we submit everything to you within a week.
Yeah, and I can
And then-
send this reminder out to everybody. That's a week. That's good, right?
Yeah, the 25th, have everything to her on the 25th. She'll recompile the list and send it to the chairman on the 26th, and we'll compile it, finalize it. I think that's reasonable.
Okay. And
Two questions about the interviews. Number one, Joe, you said that we were starting at 4:30. Is it 4:30 or 5:30?
5:30.
Okay, and second, do we want to require the candidates to bring their prospective OPM, the actual individual, to the interviews?
I see a lot of nodding yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Good
much,
point.
so much is going to depend upon intangible things that we can only get from actually meeting the person.
So that would, Jacqueline, that would fall to you to notify each of them when they set up their interview, to be sure that they have the availability of the OPM, the proposed OPM. And the other question I have here is for us is that we have the 25th, we have the 29th and 30th as the dates for the interviews. If for any reason someone is unavailable for one of the nights, should that person become unavailable at two of the nights, both nights? Should we keep the exact same interview, or should, if we should all plan on being there for both nights? If anything comes up, we just go with whomever's there. Any real preference?
I think you have to go with who's ever there. I think we've got to keep that's why we have many members of the team. Unless you don't have a quorum, then it would be a little tough, but.
I agree.
So that's a good point, though. We would need a quorum if we're going to act on this, on the information that comes out of this meeting. So we would need, as a minimum, we need a quorum. As a maximum, we'd have 7 of us there. Plus, Jacqueline, would you be in on all these also? Nope. Okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry. What was the question?
Would you attend the meetings also?
I believe I can attend. Yeah.
That's a yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe. Yes. So, yeah.
Bill, is that normal? Well, you're probably the most experienced person here.
Yes, no, Jacqueline, hopefully she's available on the 29th and the 30th. I'm concerned about the room. You're going to do in person.
I looked, Bill. It's available.
So yeah, all right. So that was my biggest concern. I'm available as
Yeah.
well. I'm happy to be there if you'd like me to be there. And so Jacqueline and I will be there if you need us. And I don't know what Erin's schedule is, but maybe she'll be there as well.
Mhm.
Okay.
So just for clarification, I'm going to do reverse order from the alphabet. I'll invite the highest one in the alphabet and then go that way, because I know one of the ones high on the alphabet could only do the 29th. So Jacqueline and I will contact them. We'll start at 5:30 in the Hammonasset room. In-person interviews. I don't think unless we make special appropriations, it's going to be difficult to do the Zoom thing, but we'll come up and let you know if that's a problem for one of the firms. And we haven't confirmed. We need to confirm with the firms and we'll get back to you. We'll do 5:30 and then 5:45. Those are the 2 times for each of those days in the Hammonasset room. Somebody shaking their head, no?
No, 5:30. It would normally be 5:45.
Yes.
6:50. It would be 6:15. So
Yeah, I'm sorry.
so it would be 5:30, 6:15, or we could just go to 6:30 and give ourselves a couple of minutes to break in between.
I think that 5:30 and 6:30 makes sense.
5:30, 6:30, thank you.
Okay.
Was Erin invited to this meeting?
I don't know.
Yes, she was. She was on, and then she had to log off. But so
Okay.
Bill or I will keep her up to date.
Thank you.
And Bill, to answer your question about if one of the respondents can't make it for some reason, either of those dates, and request a Zoom meeting, it would be 100% Zoom then. We'd all have to do Zoom. I think that would be, rather than bring all the people required to do a hybrid in for a 30-minute interview. I don't think that's necessary.
So I think we're good, except for, I just need to confirm with one firm about Tuesday, because I think I told them the 29th. So I think we're only going to maybe have one conflict, and I don't think it's going to be an issue, but if it does, I'll let you know and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Just logistically, I have a question. When we do this is going to be a pretty short period of time. And how do we do follow-up questions with all 7 of us there? If we ask a question during the interview and then people have follow-up, we don't want everybody shouting questions at somebody.
Presuming we each have a question or some version of that, I think the follow-up questions would be asked by the person who did the follow-up or who asked the question. And I don't know if that would work, but that's one way to do it. We could hold all the follow-up questions to the end, so we sure we get all the 7, however many questions we have, we get all those in, and then each of us would have to make notes to at the end to do the follow-ups. And especially if we go 5:30 and 6:30, that actually gives us a little more time to even if we're scheduled till whatever we're scheduled to, we actually have just about an hour, so we'd have to clear the room before the next person came in.
So just my experience with these interviews, it's, the half hour is usually plenty of time. Some companies go a little over, but they try to be respectful because that's what you ask them. They want to show you they can do it.
Mhm.
And then the chairman usually runs the meeting and asks, Bill, do you have a question? Dave, do you have a question? Ann, do you have a question? Goes around the room, lets everyone ask questions. And then if they have follow-up, they usually raise their hand and say, hey, I have another question. So
Okay.
it usually is pretty formal as the chairman runs it. And there's usually plenty of time to ask questions. I've never seen it, go too far over the time frame because the firms are trying to be professional and polite, knowing that there's another firm coming.
Go ahead, Dave.
Hey, Bill, really quick, when you send out your shortlist letter to these firms, do you break down the 30 minutes? So you say for the first 10 minutes, you'll presentation and Q&A for 20, or how do you guys usually write those out?
Exactly that way. And once you determine, that wasn't clear if you agreed on that, if we say you'll have a maximum of the 30-minute presentation, and then there'll be 15 minutes of questions by the committee. And so they know their time, they know what the expectations are, and they're professional firms, they get it. They know that they have a short amount of time, and they know if they have 30 minutes and they spend an hour, that's going to reflect on their interview. So that's how we've done it. And it's up to you. If that's how you'd like us to do it, Jackie and I will put those emails and or memos to them and confirm. I don't think there'll be a problem. I think that it's worked out very successfully in the ones we've done lately.
Yeah, Joe, I would
Go ahead. Go ahead, Dave.
No, I was going to mention maybe we do, and it's up to you guys how you break it up, but if we give them a 10-minute presentation, 15 minutes of question answer, and then give them a 5-minute close, because then maybe they could add some more information to something we might have missed.
Yeah.
Right.
I think a 30-minute presentation sounds like, at 5:30 on a Monday night. I'm not sure that's most productive. But give them a shorter presentation period. If 10 minutes is appropriate, whatever you guys done it before, whatever you think is appropriate, and then questions, and then I like the 5-minute wrap up, or 5-minute wrap up essentially.
So that's exactly how it's worked. I mean, we could give them a 20 or 15 if you'd like. We'll tell them whatever you think. And then always, the chairman has always said, okay, Bill, your firms did a great job. Is there anything you missed or anything you'd like to conclude with before we end? And that's how the chairman's always done it, and I've been. And so it's been much more informal. We haven't had a strict, written thing, but it's been a presentation, questions by the committee, responses, follow-up questions if somebody has them, and then the firm has it. So I don't know if I need to write that out for them. I'll tell them whatever time you tell me, though, I think it's important. Do they have a 15 or 20 minute? I think that's important because if you're going to ask them to do a presentation in this time frame, you know, that you want to see how they did, you know?
Can we say something like 10 to 15 minutes?
We can say whatever the committee wants. I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, I would say no more than 15. This way, they're gonna pitch us, give us their sales pitch. I think we'll get more out of the questions we ask them and their responses and how they respond.
I agree. I think 10 minutes is more than enough for a presentation.
Yeah, I think how Dave laid it out, 10-minute presentation, 15 minutes of Q&A, wrap up 5 minutes. I think that would suffice.
And if we do that, I think we ought to be very sure we're punctual, that we're there, you know, well prior to the 5:30. We are there prior to 5:30. We're in place. We've got our notes out, whatever we need. So we're ready to go and at 5:30 when they walk in the door, and show them the door at 5:30, and then we're ready to go.
And it also gives us an opportunity to see how prepared they are, right? Did they wing it or did they really come prepared?
So if you wanted to start at 5:15 just to get yourself organized and go over some last minute things, I think that might be appropriate. And then I'll tell them they need to be there at 5:30. They're going to be there early. So, but you know, they wait in the hall. They're very respectful. They don't, even though it's an open meeting, not too many public people come, although we couldn't kick them out. But I haven't seen any firms come early and watch the other firm in front of them. It just doesn't happen, you know.
Good point.
This is a public meeting, so technically one firm could come in and watch the other firm.
That is correct.
But they are also used to, these are firms that have done business with municipalities that are used to public meetings, so.
Yeah.
So
I like the idea of starting our meeting at 5:15 though. It makes good sense.
yes.
And there will be a recording of the meeting so that we know that it's going to go up on YouTube. Yep.
No, these are in-person meetings. They're not recorded, or Jackie takes minutes and that's it.
Okay. It's too bad we couldn't look into the hybrid because there's been some feelings that the initial start of the non-hybrid meetings are feeling as though it's not as transparent. And that's what I don't want to do is have people be coming at us saying, you know, why couldn't we sit at home and watch you guys while you were doing this? So if there's a possible way to have it be hybrid, if Jacqueline, you could look into that, that would be great. I don't know if anybody else feels that way on the team, on the committee.
Yeah, you would just need if you had the multimedia support in a conference room to do it, cameras and microphones and stuff like that to make it effective. But I'm not sure if the town has that infrastructure. Bill?
They do, because the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen are always hybrid at this point.
Bill?
So yes, they do, but Jackie and I can't commit to that. We have to get someone else to commit to that and resources. So, you know, something we could look into and get back to you if you had your heart set on it. What we can help you with is Zoom meetings 100% or in-person 100%. If you need additional services and you want to set up like the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen do, which to have other resources and more staff. So.
Right, I think maybe just for these two pieces, I don't know. I just feel like we don't want to start off, you know, I think the interview process, if we're in person, is wonderful, and you say it's an open meeting, but if a lot of people have gotten used to being able to look at these meetings through other ways. So I don't know.
I'll not speak as the chair, but as an individual. The town's existed for, I don't know, several hundred years, and the meetings were, you know, always by minutes. And it was really only since COVID that the hybrid even started. I don't see how it's necessarily a mandate that we film and transcribe every meeting. The town's operated for many years without doing that. And I haven't, of course, I'm new to town meetings, but I haven't heard any real dissatisfaction with the way the meetings are run with.
Yeah, I have, because I'm a former Board of Selectmen member. So people come
okay.
to me and say, why can't I see this meeting? Why isn't it, I can only get minutes here, but I can see every other, planning and zoning, I can see Board of Selectmen, I can see Board of Ed, but I can't see this meeting. And because this is such a, I would say a pretty high profile project, because it is the downtown, it is Academy School, it has a fairly big dollar figure on it. And my thought would be that the more transparency we can have, the better. If it's unavailable, it's unavailable. But if we can do it, I would say that would be a positive just for the transparency of this committee.
This project has the potential to be controversial, and the minute and anything you can do to avoid that would be good. I'm trying to think how each of the other presenters would feel, though, if they had if they had essentially the people who came in the second night would have the questions in advance. Dave?
Yeah, Joe, I was going to mention that. I think for these two meetings, I don't believe that the Zoom is necessary. I mean, while the public can come to the meeting, which is fine, it's not really an open meeting for them to ask questions, right? We were selected as a group to hold this RFP in these interviews, right?
They can give public comment at the beginning and usually public comment at the end is the.
Oh, even at like the meeting that we're going to be holding?
Yep.
Okay, that's a good point, John. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, there's usually public comment because these are public meetings where representative of the public, and if the public wants to state something, they, I don't think there's any public on the meeting, correct, Jacqueline? There's no one watching this at this point yet. So just having gone through 18 months of the charter review committee, which was completely Zoom, and then there were participants and that would come at the beginning or come at the end or whatever. But there were some pretty good discussions, and then people actually did watch it on YouTube and said, oh, I checked out the meeting from last week and I have a question for you. Just a thought. I mean, it's not something that's required, absolutely not required, but it's something maybe we should think about, maybe not for the project manager, but maybe the architect piece may be a good way to try to present for that, or the questions there. Just a thought.
Dave?
Hey, maybe Bill can answer this question. I don't know. Did they do the selections or the interviews for the new school on Zoom, or were they in person and did Zoom also, or what was the process there?
You did them in person only, no hybrid.
And if the public did come, they could ask questions at the beginning or end?
I don't remember that. I don't know if the public always has to have input. It's your meeting. I think it's appropriate for you to let the public speak, but I don't remember. There was no public, and I don't remember that if there was on the agenda or not.
Because that's not built into our half-hour schedule here. I don't know if that's something we need to consider or not.
No, but Joan's right. Usually every meeting you have at the beginning, at the end, because you're volunteers and you're looking for public input. The beginning of the meeting usually have public input, then you have your meeting, and at the end you let people speak. So they know when they can speak, so they can participate in the meeting if you so choose. But I think it's up to you guys to choose, and I don't know why you wouldn't let them speak, but at this point, I agree with your perspective. You guys are chosen to make the perspective of interviewing and making the selection. And the other building committee just had it totally in person, open to the public, and that's how they handled it. There's no right or wrong.
And someone mentioned this, and I think it would be better if because I would rather not unless we send all the questions out in advance. I wouldn't like to have the second team to have the questions because we're not giving the questions in advance because we want their reaction. But I think for when we eventually decide on the architect, that's probably going to be a much more visual presentation than this one. And having it available for later viewing, even for us, would be appropriate. But I don't think this would be appropriate. Anybody want to make a motion in this, or do we just move on from where we were?
Yeah, well, let's just move on. I just was bringing it up. Thanks.
What was that, Joan? I missed that.
I said, no problem. We can move on. I was just bringing it up for thought.
And I think it's a good thought, and I think for the architects, when we do the architect, that would be a very appropriate time to bring, not only bring the public in, but to have things available for us to see even later. Okay. Jacqueline, do you want to summarize where we are, and then we're all on the same page, and then,
Sure.
then we can move to close after that?
Yeah, and then there's just one more agenda item after this, but I can recap everything too for Al. So the committee is going to interview all four proposals. We're going to do the 29th to the 30th. Starting at 5:30 and then the other one at 6:30. 10-minute presentation, we'll ask them. We'll compile the questions by all the committee members, sending them to myself and Bill, and then we will send them to Joe for the final edit. The meetings will start at 5:15, in person only. We'll
about the
require the
Reference,
sorry.
are we going to try to divvy up and ask the references?
I was going to mention that too earlier. So I know the committee kind of felt like there wasn't a lot of time, but so you're interviewing on the 29th and the 30th, which is a Monday and a Tuesday. And then the following Tuesday, you have a regularly scheduled meeting. And then the following week is Board of Selectmen. So there is some time if you wanted to call those references after the 30th and then talk about it on the 6th. You still have time then to make the motion to make your recommendation to the Board of Selectmen who meets on the 13th. So I guess the
So we
committee
we don't necessarily have to decide then on the 30th. We could mull over everything, look at our notes, and then convene on the 6th for the actual decision.
And we
I
can
believe
call, and we can call the appropriate references between the 30th and the 6th. Now, Labor Day's in there, but still we should be able to we should be able to get a hold of somebody. And if not, then if we really thought that, and Labor Day did get in the way, we have a week to be sure we made the right decision by calling the references after our meeting on the 6th.
Okay, so maybe somewhere on the agenda on the 30th, there's a window of time where everybody decides who's making what phone calls to who after you finish all the 4 interviews. So I can remember that, and I think that's it. I think that's where we're at, unless I missed anything.
I think the only we have to fill in AJ on this. That's like a to-do as opposed to I don't think that's something for the next.
I'll have the minutes done pretty quickly. They're almost done, so I can send those out pretty quick.
Okay, and
Jacqueline.
I will call AJ, and after the minutes go out, I'll give AJ a call and bring him up to speed. Anne, you had a question?
Jacqueline, also wanted to mention that we want to require that the actual individual who would be named as the OPM be present at the presentations.
Thank you.
Bill?
So if you're doing a 10-minute interview, and questions, just my experience is that hours, you can have a lot of extra time. So I'm thinking you might want to give them a little more time for their presentation. I just don't think, in my experience, is the questions never last that long. So just my 2 cents.
So the other, you've been on several buildings that have been built in this town. So do you feel 20, the 10, we said 10-minute presentation, do you think it should really be more like 20 minutes to a half
I
an
think
hour?
10 to 20 minutes would be more appropriate, because then you still gonna have 40 minutes technically if you go an hour for questions, which, you know, let's say you do.
We don't want to go, the hour. We would rather have the 15 minutes to get the people in and out of the room, to get a drink of water or whatever, to refresh ourselves and maybe prep ourselves for the, who the next person is, as opposed to, one person in the door, open the door, one group goes out, one group comes in. I would like to hold some of that time for us. So that's where we came up with the 10-minute presentation, 15 to 20 minutes of questions, and a 5-minute wrap up. And if each of us, there will be 7 of us, presumably we'll have 7 questions, and and any follow-ups that could take up the time. I appreciate your perspective, Bill, but I do want to hold some of that time for us to be able to breathe between the two and reset ourselves between one company and the next.
No problem. Just giving you my 2 cents. It's your
Okay.
committee to do as you feel appropriate. I think it'll be fine.
Any other thoughts among the group?
Maybe if we say 10 to 15. in between.
It's okay.
Great.
Give them a little bit of a window.
Yeah. We want them to be succinct, but not so rushed that they're not getting the information that we're gonna need, and then we're just asking more questions. So a good presentation, we should be left with very little questions, right? Really, hopefully, if they do their presentations correctly. So,
Well, Joe, one thing I'd add, doing a ton of these, is if you know you have 10 minutes, your PowerPoint presentation is 10 minutes, right? You know what you have. If you give them 10 to 15, they're definitely going to use 15, no doubt. And that's fine too, not against it. I'm just saying you want to give them kind of a structured time. And if it's 15, it's 15, but
10 minutes, 10 slides.
I mean, going through the RFPs and their past work and their current work, I think we're kind of going to know within 10 minutes kind of where we're at.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
I'm okay with 10. Anybody feel strongly for the 15? 10-minute presentation then. Roughly 15 minutes of questioning, 5-minute wrap up. And if we run over, we do have some extra time between the two, each of the presenters. And I would presume that time in between is also public time. So if there's anybody in the room, any discussions there in that time period would be public.
yes, the public would be remaining in the room, but you would have to build in, if you want comments from the public, you'd build that into the actual agenda. Otherwise, we usually have it beginning or the end,
Beginning and the end.
not in between.
Okay. Any other business?
I will move to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
That one. That's what you talked about, Jacqueline. There was one more item that we hadn't covered.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay. And a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
In favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, done. Thank you,
All right.
Jacqueline.
Good day,
Thank you,
all.